The Smashing Machine is very much being presented as the start of a redemption arc as it pertains to The Rock's acting career. And while I will admit that this is a pretty drastic departure from the type of films that we are used to seeing him in, for me at least, this somehow still missed the mark. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before we get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
Come on. Do it. Do it!
The Smashing Machine follows MMA legend Mark Kerr, played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who reaches the peak of his career but faces personal hardships along the way. So it's pretty clear to me after watching this film and watching some of his other films that director Benny Safdie has a style all his own. And after seeing The Smashing Machine for myself, I can only assume that his goal was to make a somewhat unconventional sports movie that does not play into the tropes that we are used to seeing in the genre.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
And normally for me, that would be a great thing. That would be something that is worth praising. Unfortunately, when it comes to The Smashing Machine, removing all of those tropes and not really having a lot of interesting things to say otherwise, ended up making this film flat out boring. Now, when I say that this was kind of a slog to sit through, I have to remind you all that I am someone who enjoys and even advocates for slow burn movies. I mean, slower movies that are more character, dialogue, and plot driven are my specialty. So when I say that The Smashing Machine was even too slow for me, you know that it must be on another level. A majority of this film deals with Mark's personal life, actually much more than it does his fighting career. When you think about great combat sports films like Rocky, for instance, the fact that they were able to make you care about him more as a character by showing him going through the everyday struggles of life actually enhanced the film overall, and it made you care about him that much more when he actually got into the ring. When it comes to The Smashing Machine, it feels like this film is missing a very large chunk of a probably much better film.
But why?
They briefly show Mark going through the struggles of dealing with addiction, with obsession, and maybe even with a little bit of self-doubt. But to me, the movie doesn't do enough to sell you on these struggles to make his comeback that much more impactful. In fact, the main struggle that is shown the most in the film just so happens to be Mark's toxic relationship with his girlfriend Dawn. His girlfriend, played by Emily Blunt, who kind of feels like a walking stereotype, and easily one of the most unlikable characters ever put on film. Blunt's performance was good, she did the best with what she was given, but I really don't think they gave her enough for her to truly shine. A lot of this movie consists of these long, drawn-out scenes where it feels like nothing is really happening. And I don't know, they'll even have the characters sitting around and having these prolonged conversations about inanimate objects in the film, like cactuses, for instance. And I understand why that stuff is included. It's there to show the more obsessive-compulsive and vulnerable side of Mark when he's not in the ring. But after a while, it did kind of start to feel like they were trying to make these scenes a lot more symbolic than they actually ended up being.
How can you not care?
Like this.
Even the MMA fighting scenes in this movie came off as boring to me. Now, I guess that was done on purpose, perhaps to not glorify such a brutal sport. But if you are going into this and you know you are making a movie about mixed martial arts, I think at the very least you can sell the audience just a little bit better on what exactly these fighters are going through. But like everything else in the movie, the fights seemed very glossed over, and I just did not understand that creative decision.
I don't get it.
Speaking of odd creative decisions, I have no idea what was going on with the score of this film. Sometimes it sounded kind of tribal with drums when there were fighting scenes, and other times it sounded more hypnotic and disorienting. I guess the idea was to put you in the same headspace as Mark when he's fighting, and then in a different headspace when he gets beat so bad that his brain isn't functioning properly. But for me, more than anything, the score actually came off as more off-putting and distracting, and it absolutely took me out of the movie on more than one occasion. As far as The Rock's performance goes, a lot has been said about this already, And yes, he does go through a greater range of emotions than he does in some of his previous movies, but that's not really saying much. I might be in the minority here, but it was not to the point where I was blown away by his performance at all. To me, it's not like he disappeared into the role and became unrecognizable. It wasn't the transformative performance, to me, that some people are making it out to be. I mean, when I looked at the character, it's supposed to be Mark Kerr, obviously, but all I could see was The Rock. Maybe a little bit more all shucks at times, and maybe even a little bit more angry at times than we've seen him in other movies, but it did not blow me away. Now, just to be clear, I am not suggesting that The Rock go back to making slop. I admire the fact that he wants to take his craft a bit more seriously, but I think for his next film, it would be wise for him to find sort of a middle ground between the bullshit he usually makes and the cure for insomnia that this film was.
That makes sense.
I actually wish I could say that I was frustrated by just how underwhelming this film was to me, but I can't even say that. In the end, while watching it, I really didn't have much of a reaction to anything going on at all, which is kind of weird to say for a sports movie, which is a genre historically that has been very emotionally powerful and even inspirational. And I didn't feel either of those things. In the end, it felt like the general message of the film was to say, look what these guys went through to turn the MMA into what it is today. And I have no doubt that early pioneers like Mark Kerr made a ton of sacrifices for this sport. But to me, this movie did not do a good job of presenting that struggle to the audience in a way that we can all relate to. I almost felt like the movie thinks the audience already has a general knowledge of who Mark Kerr is, but if you don't, the character does feel somewhat underdeveloped. And that's kind of the risk that you take if you make a biopic where the attention to detail and large chunks of the story feel like they are not there.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Listen, bottom line, The Smashing Machine is by no means the worst movie I've seen all year. It might be one of the most disappointing. It has some redeemable qualities when it comes to some of the performances, but outside of that, the rest of the movie did feel kind of messy and pointless to me. In that aspect, The Smashing Machine felt like a massive missed opportunity to me, both in terms of changing the perception of The Rock's acting career, and with how, in my opinion, it failed to effectively tell this untold true story in a way that makes for a memorable cinematic experience. I kind of checked out on more than one occasion while watching this movie. It pretty much had zero emotional impact on me. And that's why The Smashing Machine feels more than deserving of the Careless Sam Gerard.
I don't care! Y'all be cool. Right on.